Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we are talking about the latest Conjuring movie called Last Rites. This is supposedly the final film in this series, but of course, just like everything else that says that, we'll wait to see because who knows? There could be different side stories that they can tell. One of the big things with this movie that could lead to other ones, and this isn't spoilers, is that there are young versions of Ed and Lorraine. So, could they take the actor and actress, and make other movies? Who knows? So, I don't know if I quite believe if it's the last one. But what we're gonna do is tell you some non-spoiler stuff of our opinions, give the movie a rating, and then talk about some spoilers. Um, so for me, I was excited for this movie. I would say I'm a pretty decently big fan of the Conjuring movies. I think they were stronger earlier on in the series because this is like number 9 or 10. I actually found out that there's one I haven't seen yet, so that's on my list to watch, the La Lorena movie. Uh, but we have seen all the Annabelles, we've seen the other Conjuring titled films, and we've seen The Nun. So both of them. So we are, well versed in this series. We kind of know what to expect when it comes to the type of story and the scares and whatnot. And, thinking about this being the one that is supposed to end them all, um, I thought it was all right. I didn't think it was bad by any means. It definitely still felt like one of the movies of this series. It wasn't something that felt like a money cash grab or anything like that. Um, but I thought it was decent. I thought it was good. Do I think that you need to rush out to the movie theaters? Not necessarily. I think the biggest thing for me that I would say was disappointing is that I thought it wasn't quite as scary as the others. I feel like it relied more on jump scares as opposed to some tension building. Like it almost kind of felt like you knew what kind of scares were coming just based on what we've seen in the past. There wasn't anything that kind of reinvented the scare system. Um, it is a decently long movie. I don't remember how long the other ones are, but it is over 2 hours. And that's because there's kind of two plot lines going on in this movie, and there's a lot of character development, in my opinion, where maybe we could have trimmed some of that up to make it seem like it would, move along a little bit better. There were times where I felt like, okay, I get it. Can we move on to the next part of this, with some of the scare scenes? But ultimately, like I said, I thought it was good. I don't think it was great or phenomenal, but if you're a fan of the series, I wouldn't skip it. I would definitely see it. If you haven't seen any of the movies in this series, I would start with something else. Of course, why would you start with the end at this point? But um, yeah, if you haven't seen the movies, I'd probably start with something else. What do you think?
To that point, do you need to watch the other movies before seeing this, or will it make sense without any prior knowledge?
I
I
think it would
think
make sense.
I think you'd be able to watch this film without having seen the other ones. Like if your friends are all wanting to go and maybe you haven't seen the other ones, I don't think you're going to be like confused or not knowing what's going on. I mean, even just from the trailer, you get kind of an idea, and as long as you know that they're, I don't want to say ghost hunters, but paranormal investigators, maybe not investigators, solvers. Uh, but if you get the idea of who they are, Ed and Lorraine, that's really all you need to know. You don't really need to see the other films to be able to make sense of this one.
I think the only thing that you really get out of it for being around for all the other movies is, for instance, when they're walking around in Ed and Lorraine's little like creepy room where they hide everything, the camera pans to different artifacts, and there are ones that are referenced in previous films. And it's like, oh, that's from this movie, and that's from this other one. This is the creature that had to do with that. But it's not to say that you need to know that information. It's just kind of if you've been around, here's a little Easter egg for you.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed this movie quite a bit more than I think Jeremy did. I thought it was just an overall good scary film. I didn't really feel like it was like cheap jump scares. I thought it was a decent level of creepiness. Is it the scariest thing I've ever seen? No, but I don't know. I felt like there was some good creepy vibes. It felt very much like we were stepping into October Halloween time, even though it's not October yet. And it had the vibes. Was there some extra stuff like character development of maybe more minor things or more minor characters that we didn't necessarily need? Some extra fluff? Yeah, it could have been trimmed down a little, but at the same time, I feel like so often we're saying, "Oh, I wish we had more time with this character," or "I wish we had more time with this," as we're reviewing movies and stuff. And so it's a really delicate balance. Um, I do think this tips a little on the scale in terms of maybe a little bit too much. But I don't think that the two storylines really detracted from it. And when we talk about two storylines, and you can kind of get this from the trailer, right? There's the Smurl family that is dealing with whatever this demon is. And then Lorraine says in the trailer, this was like one of our first demons or, and it's come back to get us. So they're kind of referencing some of the stuff that's happened to them before. And so that's kind of the two storylines that we have going on here. Um,
However, I will say, because we already said, you don't have to see the other movies to understand what's happening. They cover what the before actually is. It's not like you have to see a different film to understand, what is coming back. They
right.
show everything.
Yeah. Yep. I would think that's fair. I don't know. I feel like the storyline was a good one to end on. It was a haunting that needed to be solved, which is, the bread and butter of what they do. Um, they added in some extra flavorings of it being somewhat different than before, with it being something that they've encountered before, but having to like revisit their past and that can have its own layer of issues too. Um,
I just feel like within this, like, even if we forget about any other horror films and we just focus on this series, I just feel like there were movies in this series that were better than this one. And the fact that this is supposed to kind of bring things together, it's supposed to tell us as the audience what was the one thing that made them want to quit their job, because that is a big component of this. Why was this their last case? I just think there's a lot there that would hold some weight to this should be absolutely amazing. Like, we've seen nine other films that, well, I don't know if all nine of them deal with directly Ed and Lorraine, but the ones that do, I feel like there were instances where things felt more tense than this one.
trying to look up a list here so I can kind of get an idea of what else is in this series. Because to be perfectly honest, I don't remember a whole lot of them.
Yeah,
Like
I can ramble them off.
specifically, huh?
I can ramble them off.
Well, I pulled up the list here. So we've got the different Annabelles. There's Conjuring 1, 2, and 3, Nun 1 and 2, Curse of La Llorona. There's looks like
Yeah,
three different Annabelles movies.
yeah.
Um, I don't
Honestly, I feel like
necessarily remember them to be able to say like, well, this one's not as good because I like this other one better. I don't have it's been too long since I've seen some of the other ones for me to really
I'm
be able to compare it.
I'm pretty sure one of the Conjuring movies covered the Amityville Horror, and that was one of my favorites. There's an Annabelle film that I thought was really, really good. Yeah, I don't know. I was just expecting a little bit more from the uh, the idea that this was supposed to be. I mean, of course, once you realize, and they talk about it in the trailer, why, like, you can kind of piece it together. Lorraine says that it's coming back to haunt them. Like, this time it's actually personal. And so that might be the reason why that they stop doing what they're doing, because, they've been helping all these people. They're pretty selfless themselves to put themselves in harm's way. But then there's a new component of this is hitting a little too close to home. Well, what is it? Well, you can probably imagine, what that means. And, that ends up being a big part of the film.
Trying to see which one it is that talks about Amityville. I think it might be,
What was the
I think it's
second
number
one?
two, Conjuring 2.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, I'm just going to put this out there, and this is going to sound really silly, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the somewhat recent horror movies that we saw was Insidious, The Red Door, right? And I say somewhat recent because it wasn't in recent months, but it's within the last 2 years. My brain this whole time going into this movie thought that it was a continuation of that. And they are totally different franchises. So I may have had some different expectations going into this film just because I remember that movie being okay. And maybe that's part of why I enjoyed this so much more is because I feel like it was better than that film.
Well, both of them have Patrick Wilson in it, so that's probably why, but
There's a good chance.
I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So one of the things that I feel some of these movies have had going for them are iconic moments. Is there a moment in this film that you would classify as iconic? So, for instance, like the original Conjuring, the clap scene, like 100%. You think about what horror movie had that, and you're like, oh, Conjuring. Like it's something that wasn't really done before.
Um, in terms, I don't know if it's necessarily an iconic moment, but something that I think is really memorable to this film, so kind of iconic, I guess, is the little baby doll. And we only very briefly see it in the trailer, so I don't want to say what it is about the doll that's creepy. I
I'm pretty
just
sure that wasn't the trailer.
um I mean we see the doll, but you don't really see what's creepy about the doll other than just the normal look of the doll.
I could have sworn that was in one of the trailers because I knew what was coming when that happened.
Maybe it was in a different trailer than the one that I just watched, but
Could
anyway,
be.
that doll in particular, I think, is what I would say is like the creepy moment of this film of like, ooh. Anytime you saw that thing come on screen, you're like, oh no.
One of the things I thought was interesting as well was the design of some of these like creepy figures. They reminded me a lot of the family from Resident Evil 7, I think it is. The one where the main character goes like looking for his sister and there's like this creepy family out on this piece of land. It's kind of like almost a um, Sawyer family type feel to it. Uh, but the visual look of the characters reminded me a lot of them.
Something else, and I'm going to ask about your iconic thing if you have one, but before that, something else that I thought was kind of neat about this particular movie is just that it was set in the 80s, right? And you see that in the trailer, it's 1986. There's just something about the 80s that makes everything creepier. I don't know what it is. It's just a vibe. It's it's a totally different feeling. It feels very different than today's world, than the 90s world, than like 60s, any of it. It just there's something about the 80s that I really enjoy. So back to iconic moments. Is there anything that you thought was special to this, or was your whole point that there wasn't one?
That was more or less my point. Because, when I think about some of the things that happened in this film, one of them that I thought should have been more impactful ended up feeling more silly than anything. I'm trying to think. The one that they really bank on in the trailer, the one where someone is approaching what looks to be like a kid in a bedroom, and the kid is facing away. And I think it was Lorraine that was approaching her, saying like, "Honey, are you okay?" And then the face turns, and it's the creepy girl. These moments that I feel like they try to show in the trailer to draw people in, a lot of those have been done before. Like that's not something that I would say that this movie did, and it's like, whoa, like that was a big thing from last Rites.
Yeah.
So as
I
far,
I almost feel like that's kind of the point of this being a final film, if you will, though, is that it's almost like paying homage to all the different classic tropes of scary things.
hmm. I don't know if I would do that for this. But I mean, you could be right. Like maybe that was their approach. But if I was in charge of this film, I would want the final film to be somewhat unique in that aspect. But what would you give the movie out of 10?
I am giving this movie a 9. I don't feel like I know we say a 10 is not perfect. I don't think that it's perfect. I can't there's something in my gut that's preventing me from giving it a 10. I feel like to your point, maybe there could have been something a little more, maybe a little bit of the fat trimmed off so we have time for something else epic like the clap, for example, or something along those lines. Just something up to kick it up just a little bit that would have really pulled it in. But overall, I did really enjoy this film. Um, I feel like it was just a good, creepy Halloween type movie.
Yeah, I was actually looking to see who was the director and writers, and James Wan is not part of this, at least not in that sense. And I think maybe that would have helped. Um, when I was watching the movie and I was like 30 to 45 minutes in, I was like, this is feeling like a solid 7 at the moment. Um, it could go up, it could go down. And I think ultimately, coming out of this movie, I'm at a 6. Just because at that point, I felt like we had like a decent amount of character development. Where can we really start to push this movie? Uh, the plot direction, and there ended up being just more and more character development, and unfortunately, in my opinion, nothing too unique happening. And so by the end of it, do I think it's a decent film? Yes, maybe slightly above average. But it's not like if I think about, oh, a Conjuring film, I don't think this is going to be one of my first ones to go um, to watch. Let alone if someone asks me, I want to watch the Conjuring films, what's a good one? Of course, I don't want to start at the end by any means, but again, like we said, you don't need to see the other ones to enjoy this film if you do. And
I
so,
feel like a big part of our ratings being so different is you're basing it, or part of you're influenced based on the past of this movie series, whereas it's been a while since I've seen any of the other ones in this series, so I don't really remember, so I can't have that be a good comparison. So my comparison is more of just horror movies today.
do you remember what you gave Weapons?
I gave that one an 8.
So you think this one was better than Weapons?
I feel like if I were going to rewatch one of them, I would probably pick this one over Weapons.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
They're very different films, even though they're both, in the horror franchise, but and maybe part of it's just because I like these actors better, but um
yeah.
I don't know, Weapons just it was a good film, but it wasn't necessarily like a favorite or anything.
I don't want to keep pushing the envelope, but my follow-up question would be, if a friend came up to you and said, "Hey, I want to go see a scary movie this weekend," which one would you push them towards? I would definitely push them towards Weapons,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I feel like they're both pretty solid choices.
All right, so that's our ratings. We're going to talk about some spoilers here. So, what is the big plot line that's going on? There's two of them, right? There's the family that Ed and Lorraine need to help. And then the overarching one is that Ed and Lorraine were in the middle of helping somebody, and there was this mirror that was a part of it. And when Lorraine went to touch it, she had like this vision that, a whole bunch of things was going to be affected, but the piece that really drew her in was that it was going to affect her baby that was supposed to be born very, very soon. And so she is rushed to the hospital by Ed, and when she has her baby, it is a stillborn. The baby appears to not be alive, and she, prays and begs God to let her baby live, and the baby does, come around and is now alive. Uh, And so during this process, with the mirror and the kid thing going on, Lorraine was concerned that this evil being was trying to uh, impact or, do something to her kid. She was even freaking out while the procedure was happening, thinking like this thing was in the room. I think the power was out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a very stormy night and the power went out.
Yeah. So it was a pretty wild situation, but that's what kind of kicks off their overarching story because, then the kid grows up and then the kid is kind of experiencing these different things just like their parents have, where she either thinks she's seeing things or she thinks that she has like these kind of weird visions like her mom does. Uh, and so she's trying to like figure out which ones are real, which ones aren't. Her and her mom have this little thing where, Ed and Lorraine don't want this to affect their daughter, right? They don't want to pass down this job or service that they have. And so one of the things that Lorraine tries to teach her daughter is like this little lullaby of, if she gets scared, she can sing it and try to not be scared anymore. So that plays a key thing throughout the film as well. But ultimately, her daughter, kind of does lean into uh, what Ed and Lorraine do, and she ends up being a significant piece towards the end. Um, but do you want to cover what's going on with the Smurl family?
Sure. So we've got a family of eight living in one house. So a lot of there's I think like two teenage kids, two smaller kids, maybe around 5 or 7, somewhere in there. The parents, and then I think the grandparents. So we got 8 people living in this little house. One of the teenagers has her confirmation, and so as part of her gift from, I think it's from one of the grandparents, is that she gets this really creepy mirror. And I don't understand why anybody would think this mirror is a good gift because it's got these like weird baby doll heads as part of the metallic like ornament on the top of the mirror, which is just super creepy. I know they wanted to get her a mirror because her sister was always using the bathroom, classic 80s situation, of needing to do my hair and stuff. But that mirror was just so creepy. I don't know why you would think that that's a good gift. But anyway, so of course the teenager, they think it's creepy. They try to throw it away at one point or just have it disappear, right, in the garbage truck. But then some haunting stuff starts to happen to them, and they see some creepy things. They realize when she blows out her candle, she sees on the tape later that something else blew out her candle. It wasn't just her bratty sister, it was like a paranormal entity. Um, they it kind of slowly starts to take over everybody, right? There's the classic dad doesn't believe anybody, so he thinks it's fine. And then eventually it goes to get him too. And I'm kind of glazing over a little bit about, the hauntingness of the family just because it's, to Jeremy's point earlier, it's all very classic stuff of you see things that aren't there. There's the baby doll that I mentioned that was always it's a crawling doll and it says mama because it's like crawling to try to find its mom, right? But at one point it somehow manages to stand up on 2 legs and then whoever's looking at it, I think it's one of the little kids, they see this face of like a very old lady like holding the doll, and so that, creeps her out, and so she runs away. Um, I think if there was one thing missing from this film that I wish we could have got from it, it would have been maybe a body takeover, if you will, because we kind of have that with Lorraine's daughter Judy towards the end of the film, but there's no like the entity talking through her, saying mean things or creepy things, or, I wish we could have had a little bit more of like maybe a verbal contact with this demon, making, taking over somebody's body to say things.
Well, it
I
just
feel like
makes
that
me
would have made it.
wonder because, they say all of these are based on true stories. Well, if that didn't happen, that would be a Hollywood fluff.
That's true. Yeah.
I think that's also what kind of restricts it because I haven't read into this. I haven't done any research on this specific case, but if they stayed as close as they could to it, and it was, basically your standard thing that happened for a family, but to end it all, we find out how Ed and Lorraine are connected to it. Um, it almost makes me wonder if they wanted this idea for the film to be this is the one that made them quit their job, but it wasn't actually as strong as they thought. And maybe that idea that it's gonna be so terrible that it ended their job, like they're banking on that almost. Whereas when you actually see it, you're like, I feel like they went through worse things before.
Yeah. Well, I think the wanting to end your job after this, there's a couple different things, right? In terms of like background information that's going on. So we've got Ed who's suffered a heart attack before and really can't afford to have another heart attack. So like they're hitting on him having a heart healthy diet and needing to really cool it with the paranormal investigating because it gets your heart racing and stuff, right? So it's extra risks that he shouldn't be taking. And then there's the possession of their daughter, their only kid that they had that almost didn't survive at birth. They want her to have the best of everything. We've got a whole side plot going on of her getting engaged and the whole dad and, future son-in-law trope of them having a little bit of tension and trying to get along and not that the guy's a jerk or anything, but just, it's the typical dad wanting to protect his daughter.
You know how there's those memes where it's like they take a plot point of a movie and then they slightly change it and then they just cut to credits on the
Yes.
meme?
Yep.
So imagine this, because this happens in the movie. You watch the trailer. Ed and Lorraine, the one that ended it all. And like within the first 30 minutes of the film, with the character development of Ed and Lorraine, the people, this family have the thing happen. The um Father Gordon from the church goes to see Ed and Lorraine, and they're like, "This is not for us anymore." Boom, credits roll. Like that's what ended it all, is that they wanted retirement.
Yeah.
It just, I feel like that's one of those things that slightly pulls you out for a second at least, thinking about like, wait a minute, are we gonna do this trope again where they're like, oh, it's the last day on the job, I don't want to do it anymore, and then they have one more and it almost kills them, kind of a thing, and I don't know.
Well, in a way, they kind of were forced to handle this last case. It's not just that they decided to, right? It's that their daughter Judy has been haunted by this demon for, the last however long. And that's,
Mhm.
I don't really even understand how Judy got to the Smurl's house or why. Oh, it's
She had that
because she
vision.
She said something about how it was the last place that the father priest guy had been to before he died. And so she took it upon herself to go there for that reason, I guess, to try to figure some stuff out.
Yeah. So I want to kind of clean up a little bit about the story of, how we're getting to different things.
Yeah, go
So
for it.
we had the thing with the Ed and Lorraine in the beginning, where she gives birth and whatnot. Kid grows up. Then, because it bounces back and forth. So then we find out what happens with the Smurl family. They want help. Ed and Lorraine say no. And then we get some character development with Ed and Lorraine's family, where, I think it's Ed's birthday,
Yep.
and their daughter's boyfriend comes over. There's this character development segment where he wants to propose to their daughter. And so we kind of get that attachment there for their character development that, the mom is like, absolutely, but the dad's playing tough guy, saying, no, I don't know about you marrying my daughter. It's only been 6 months. And then, it happens really quickly because the daughter comes back and sees the ring on accident. And so things are great. And then we cut back to the other family. Some more haunting things are happening. One where the girl is like throwing up in the sink different pieces of glass because they threw out that mirror. So then, Father Gordon tries to get involved because Ed and Lorraine won't. And when he's at the church trying to figure some stuff out, he has a moment where the demon attacks him and convinces him to commit suicide. And so that's what pulls Judy in because she, like you said, finds out that that was the last place that he was before he committed suicide in the church. And so when she goes over there, Ed and Lorraine want to find out, well, where's our daughter? What's going on? And when they get there, when Lorraine walks into buildings or houses, whatever, she has whatever goes on in her head where she's trying to piece together. And we find out that in this house, there are these different things that are messing with the family, but it those aren't the big baddie, so to speak. Because we saw somebody with an axe chasing somebody. We saw the old lady messing with the daughter with the baby doll. And I think there was one more too that I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe it was the Anna, no, not Annabelle. The Annabelle component of this film is PTSD with the daughter. And that's one of the scenes that I thought was kind of silly is, she thinks she's seeing things about Annabelle, and there's like a humongous Annabelle that is chasing her through a house, even though it's not really happening. And I just thought that was super silly. Like when we see the trailer and we see that Annabelle is going to be a part of this film, I was really hoping for them to bring something in here that would have been amazing for Annabelle. I don't quite think that's what it was.
I feel like Annabelle was a waste in this movie. She didn't really add
Yes.
anything.
Right. 100%. And Annabelle has been one of my favorite components of this series. She's iconic. I will 100% put that out there. And so the fact that she really fell flat in this movie was not my favorite. So, Ed and Lorraine, they find out that there's these three things going on here, but something is on top of them, like above them. And so they start looking through the house and they go up to the attic and come to find out there's the mirror that they messed with all those years ago that tried to go after their daughter. Even though this family, the Smurl family, threw out this mirror, it's upstairs in the attic. And so this is what pulls Ed and Lorraine to actually come back and actually deal with this thing. Um, and then we get, the climax of the film where things are going crazy in the house. They're trying to get the mirror out. There's these demon things that are going back and forth with all of them. Um, and honestly, I felt like the ending climax almost seemed kind of long. Like, I feel like we saw so many things that were already done in other films. I was like, okay, where's that thing that's going to push this one over the edge? It's going to make this component memorable. And I mean, based on what I remember, they try to get the mirror out of the attic. It gets super heavy because the demon doesn't want him to. The daughter gets taken over briefly to, mess with things a little bit. Um,
The cover comes off the mirror and the Smurl dad looks in it even though he's not supposed to. So he
yeah.
falls down the attic steps.
So
A lot of people fall down the stairs.
why in the world, if Ed knew, don't look at the mirror, why didn't they flip it over?
I was wondering that too. I don't know.
Because they're carrying it and it has a sheet over it so they don't look at it, but it's like, bro, just flip it. Unless it's double-sided, but I highly doubt it was.
I don't think so because we saw the other side of it in some of the other segments.
Oh, well, there you go.
And I I guess maybe because as they're carrying it down the attic steps, they don't want somebody else to look at it or something. I don't know. They could have done some things a little different to cover it up. How about the seams of the sheet that you have covering it aren't on the front?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Do you remember how they got rid of the demon?
Um,
There was one shot that I really liked in this film, and it was right when stuff was hitting the fan towards the end of the film, and I'm pretty sure you probably hated this shot based on the style of the shot, but it was like it focused on, I think, maybe the mirror, and then it zoomed way out above the house and it spun, and then it came back into the house and it went to Lorraine. I thought that was a really cool shot because it kind of was like the this is where the fun begins kind of moment, um, where we know something's about to go down with that mirror and it's going to affect Lorraine right now, and let's go. So I really liked that shot.
Yeah, I could see that. I too feel like the ending of this film was a little too long of, once they realized, okay, the mirror's in the attic, that's the issue. Um, the daughter, they find her hanging in the attic, and so they, try to resuscitate her,
Yep.
which I thought was really strange that the dad was, okay, bear with me here. The dad was really focused on doing CPR, or at least on like the chest compressions. I understand the protectiveness of wanting to protect your daughter. However, the fiance was a policeman. Policemen, as far as I'm aware, are like what do you call that? Trained to do that stuff. Like they're the most effective, not saying police and period are the most effective, but like he's trained to do CPR. Wouldn't you want somebody who's trained to do it to, trust to bring her back versus just this is my daughter, let me do it? Because he wouldn't let the fiance help at all. And I feel like the fiance should have said something about like I'm trained to do this or something because they weren't doing any of the breathing part of the CPR either. It was just the chest compressions. I don't know. I just thought the scene was a little oddly handled.
I will say, if I were to pick anybody's character development that I thought was great, it was his. It was the former police officer, the guy that wants to marry Judy,
Yeah.
Ed and Lorraine's daughter. His name is Tony, and his background was that, he was a police officer. He met Judy, and about a week into meeting Judy, he goes out on a call, and when he goes to enter the house, which had somebody in there that was armed, he went to open the door, and there was a shotgun right in front of his face, and he heard the click of someone pulling the trigger, but nothing happened. So then they tackle the guy, and take care of everything. And what they find out is that that shotgun was loaded, but it misfired. And so he feels like he was a walking ghost. He feels like there's another world out there where he is not part of like another um, parallel universe kind of a thing where he isn't alive. And so that completely changed who he was because one, that would have meant that he wouldn't be able to spend the rest of his life. Well, there'd be zero chance that he would spend the rest of his life with Judy. And he didn't like that. And so after that moment, and it changed his life forever, he went and bought a wedding ring and he held on to it for 6 months until he asked her parents. And so I thought that story moment was really good. And he was explaining that to Ed, who was the one that was very hesitant on, letting this guy marry his daughter after 6 months. So I thought that was super effective.
Well, and he told the story so quick too. And I don't mean like he rushed through the story, but I just mean like he told the story. We didn't get to see it, but we still got to hear him verbalize it. And it was a really effective background building for that character. I feel like so often when we try to do background building for characters, we take way too long to get through it. And I feel like they did a really good job of, all right, we want him to have this background. It's really impactful, but we don't need to spend a ton of time on it for it to still have that impact. And so it was really efficient, I think.
Yep, 100%. So I feel like if there was more of that, where one, it was good storytelling, and two, it was, like you said, more efficient, I think this movie could have moved along a little bit more. Um, yeah. They did say at the end of the movie, so like when everything is good to go, and then they bring the mirror back to Ed and Lorraine's house. There's a whole thing towards the end that talks about the real Ed and Lorraine's life, and there's pictures, there's video, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Um, I can't say whether the stuff is real or not. That's anybody's opinion, but it's at least entertaining. I can tell
Yeah.
you that.
I think one of the just to kind of close out, the description of this movie and stuff is one of the things that they really hit hard on in the beginning, and then we see why throughout the film is they collect these artifacts because some of them you just can't get rid of. If you try, they come back, right? That's what happened with this mirror, both with Ed and Lorraine and with the Smurl family because the mirror came back to haunt them. And so it's better to just keep them contained. And that's why they have that like haunted room, if you will, of artifacts.
Hmm. Any other big things for this movie?
I don't think so. I feel like we hit on the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the
All right.
great.
Well, that was our talk on The Conjuring Last Rites. We will see if this ends up being the last movie in the series. Honestly, I would like to see more about Annabelle, but I also don't know how many other stories there are that are involved with Annabelle. So we'll see. But if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop us a like if you liked the video, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on The Conjuring Last Rites. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.